Hello everyone, and welcome to French Fried Trains. Today's video is going to be something a little different, and we're going to be taking a look at my Minecraft USS Enterprise refit here. And I'm doing this video as a way to say thank you. We've recently hit 400 subscribers, and I want to thank each and every one of you. Normally I show off the city that I was building for these 100th subscriber videos, but that world crashed and became unstable. So for the last few months, I've been working on this USS Enterprise from the Star Trek movies. We'll take a look at the outside first here, and even with my render distance turned all the way up, you can't see everything. This is based on the Refit Enterprise from the early Star Trek movies, most notably the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan, but there are some elements of the later Enterprise A thrown in. And this mega build has a completed full interior that we're going to be touring. Every space is filled out. You can see on the side it says Starship USS Enterprise, United Federation of Planets. Now, one of my goals with this, as with most of my builds, is to do it completely in vanilla Minecraft. So there are no texture packs here. And also, this was built entirely by hand, with no editing or mods. The only thing that was copied was I used the structure command to copy the warp engine nacelle from one side to the other. Everything else was done completely by hand here. And if we come down under the back of the engines here, you can see we have a shuttle coming out of the shuttle bay at the back here. And we can check out the open shuttle bay from the outside and see deep into the ship through to the cargo bay here. Now, I just looked at plans for inspiration. There's many great deck plans out there, but I did not follow them exactly. This is more my idea of the Enterprise. My main goal was to get the set scene in the movie where they're supposed to be, and I just used the plans as inspiration, so it's not exact. I've also done this cutaway, so we can look into the ship and see that everything's filled out and connected here. So up here in the saucer, you can see there's a main bridge on top, and a backup bridge down in the center there with the computer core running through it. I did this to show that there's no cheating on the interior. All these turbo lifts are really connected, and as we see here, you can see the warp core is running from the very top all the way down to the bottom like it's supposed to be. It's not broken up. Here's the inside of the neck. You can see the warp core goes all the way back to go to the engines. You can see the arbitorium down there, and this cutaway view allows us to see just how big this cargo bay and shuttle bay is here. Plus, it looks really cool. And then you can see the warp energy is coming up this pylon and into the warp nacelle over there, which has a full interior as well. And I've made it nighttime real quick here, just so we can see the outside of the ship and what it looks like at night before we head on in and go tour the interior. So we'll cruise up this neck here. We'll take a look at the warp engines lit up there. At the top of the neck, we have the impulse engines, and they're glowing because I used lava. And we're going to come up and in, and we'll start our tour in the very top of the ship, and we'll come in through this bridge airlock up here. So there's this little airlock room back here behind the bridge. There's a bathroom over here, and there's some equipment lockers where the spacesuits would be, and you have to come through this turbo lift to get into the bridge here. I accidentally fell down. Had to come back up to the bridge level. And this is deck 1, and it's pretty much just the bridge. So here's the bridge. You can see I used lots of banners and signs for all the different computers. We have the science station back here where Spock sits, and some other stations going around this outside edge. This big black square is supposed to be the view screen. Over here we have the tactical weapons control station. And come into the center. We have helm and navigation, and we can sit here in the captain's chair. So that's the bridge. And we have this green glass thing on the top, as was seen in the movie. And now we'll move on. So we'll come back to the turbo lift, and we'll head down to deck 2. Now we're coming out on the deck 2 port side, and we have a hallway on this side. If we come all the way up front, this is the officers' mess hall, where the bridge crew can have their meals. So we just have a bunch of tables. Here's the food processor there. That's where you'd get your food. There's a bathroom right here. And then this mess hall stretches all the way across the front of this upper dome. And we come through here, and there's a hallway on this side. In this central part here, this is how we get access to the top of the computer core. So this big blue thing is the computer core, and we can walk all the way around it. And we can actually go inside of the core as well. So if we come through here, there's some workstations inside of the core here. And the floor is glass because this core is multi-level, and there's another workstation area below it. Then we'll come out of there, and we'll move back down this side to the back of this deck. And back here, we have the officer's lounge. If we come in here, there's a food processor slot there, and a little mini bar. And this was a separate little room. Here's where Kirk and Spock and McCoy have a conversation in the movie, the motion picture. And then there's more seating over here. And there's little plants down in there. And then we have these big observation windows at the back here. And there's a bathroom over here in this lounge. We have some plants and another big seating area. This looks out over the back of the saucer there. And you can just barely make out the warp nacelles. But I'm at maximum render distance, so you don't really get the view you would really get on the real ship. And that's pretty much it for deck 2 here. So we'll come back to the turbo lift. And then we'll move down a deck here. And this is where it goes down to one central turbo shaft through the saucer here. So we'll come down, and we're going to go to deck 3. If we come out this side, this is another level of the computer core in here, and you can go inside of that one as well. Then the rest of deck 3 is pretty much for the officers here. And it's this nasty orange color because there was a deck in the motion picture that was that color. And I had this idea to use these stairs to get the angles that the corridors have. And it ended up looking okay on the straightaways, but on the curves it looks like a mangled mess. If I had to do it again, I would not do the corridors like this. And here is pretty much all officers' quarters. So if we come in here, they have a sleeping area, and over there, a separate little office area. And it's kind of weird too, the curvature of the hall. There's a sonic shower and their own personal bathroom. And that's what the officers' quarters look like. And if we come around this corridor, that's pretty much just a ring of a bunch of those for the senior officers. Like this one is more straight and it's bigger, so this would be like the captain's quarters. And it's pretty much the same thing, just due to where it's at in the hall, it gets to be straightened out here. Then on the other side over here, we have the port phaser control room. And these are for the phasers that are on the top of the saucer. So you have the bottoms of the phaser turrets there and a little control board. And this just goes all the way around. So all of these inner doors on the right are different officers' quarters that are all the same. Then we have a forward phaser control there. And now we're on the other side. More quarters. We have our starboard phaser control room on the left there, which is the same as the other one. And that's pretty much it for deck 3 here. So as we get back around to this hallway, we'll come back to the turbo lift. So we'll come in here, and we'll come down a deck. And this is going to be the first of the main big decks of the saucer. In the center here, we have an emergency bridge, which pretty much looks like the other bridge, except there's no station at the back. I've changed some of the seat colors and the roof glass color, and I've added this stripe around it just to differentiate it from the main bridge. And then we'll come around here. This is still turbo lift. And we'll come out on the starboard side of deck 4. And there's 3 or 4 different rings going out on this saucer. So on this first one, we have a sick ward with a bunch of hospital beds and a nurse station. Now this isn't the main sick bay you see in the films. This is like extra overflow, like if they were evacuated a planet or in battle and they need extra medical beds. And that pretty much has multiple sick wards coming around this first inner ring on this deck. So we'll continue on. So like I said, here's the first ring hallway on deck 4. This is the Chief Medical Officer's office, but we'll check that out once we go in here. This is actually supposed to be the main sick bay you see in the films. So we have a whole bunch of medical beds here and a nurse's station over there. And it wraps around because it's supposed to be curved, but it's really hard to do in Minecraft. Then there's this back room that never had the lights on. There's a stasis tank there, just in case. And that does go out to a rear exit, but we'll check out the rest of this sickbay complex first. So if we come through here, this is like the main scanner bedroom. And this is where they scanned Lieutenant Ailia in the motion picture. This is like imaging to see inside the body. Then here is the Chief Medical Officer's office. And he has a desk and some computers and stuff. Then this is just like a medical storage room. So that's the main sickbay complex here. So we'll come back out into the corridor. So we'll come back around the corridor here. This we have bathrooms and showers, because a lot of the enlisted crew, the way I have the quarter set up, don't have their own bathrooms. So there's a lot of shower rooms throughout the ship. And another shower there, and then there's a turbo lift back here. We actually have to cross through the turbo lift to get to the other side here. Right now we're at the back port side of the saucer. Here is a medical supply room. There's even more extra beds in case they had to evacuate a planet or something like that. Here's the ship's barber shop. A couple chairs here. This is where you go to get your haircut. And we'll continue on. And we'll keep coming around this corridor here. There's the main central turbo lift on this side of the ship. And it kind of has the same thing on this first part of the hallway. More extra sick wards full of beds. And we'll keep cruising around. This corridor here runs up the front of the ship from the turbo lift all the way to the center of the front. And we have even more medical wards in here with even more beds. Then over here we have the locker room for the operating room. So this is where the surgeons would get cleaned and prepped if they had to do like a major surgery. And back here is the unfortunate room. This is like the autopsy room and the morgue. This is where they would store the bodies if they had to. So we'll come out of here. And then this door comes into an actual operating room here. And this would be for like major surgeries that can't be fixed by their magic devices seen in the movies and TV shows. That computer screen was messed up, so I had to fix it. So there's an operating room here. And then there's this small observation area in the middle here. So this is where you could observe the surgery. And then there's a second operating room here. And that's it for the OR complex. Then we'll continue on. And this is back where we started with the main sick bay. So we're going to move down. There's the rear entrance to sick bay. And that just goes in through that back room. Right here we have a small Jeffries tube. And I know a lot of people like to make really complex Jeffries tube systems that go deck by deck, but I didn't really do that. I just shoved some where I could fit them. I didn't really want to spend that much time on this. Here's a damage control room. This is where damage control officers would coordinate everything. It's like their command center. All these different ores are supposed to be different computer screens. There's only so much you can do in plain Minecraft. But the banners help out a lot. And we'll come out of here, back into the corridor. Here we have a storage room. There's another turbo lift here. And we'll keep on cruising. As we come around here, here's another big Jeffries tube. The kind seen on the Enterprise A in the later movies that you can walk through, with all the weird piping running through it. And there's a little console in here. And this comes all the way back out into a different ring. So we're not going to go out that entrance. We'll come back out the way we came. So we'll come back out into the hallway again and continue moving on. Down here we have another turbo lift. There's nothing else on this section of the hallway here. This cross corridor goes down to the port side of the saucer. And on this straightaway, we have yet another extra hospital ward here, just in case. And over here, we have the dental area. So this is where you go for the ship's dentist. We have 2 chairs in here to get your teeth worked on, because that's something not shown on screen ever, but the ship probably would have to have it going on long missions. And we'll continue out to the next ring here. Here's the armory in the phaser range. And back here is where they would keep all the phasers and weapons, and you'd have the armory officer here checking out the weapons to each officer. And then you can come in here and practice shooting targets with your phaser. And we'll come it out and move on. So we'll come down this hallway. Right here is the other entrance to the medical storage room. And we have a turbo lift right here. We're going to cross over to the other side of the ship. This one back here runs parallel to the turbo shaft going back, so there's another turbo lift door here. And this takes us out on the upper level of the impulse engine bay. So up here you can see this is the top of the warp core, and it splits to go into the impulse reactors. But we'll check out more of that when we're on the next deck. So we'll continue on. This is the ship's robotics lab, where they can work on robots and cybernetic things. Then we'll hop down here. This is an airlock. You can see there's some spacesuits here. And you would come through this door, and this takes you up onto the top of the saucer outside. So this is where we're at, on the back of the saucer. And we'll come back inside and head out of here. There's a bunch of those airlocks with ladders like that. Back here we have atmospheric processors, and there's a lot of these scattered throughout the ship for multiple redundancies. And here's the fuel tanks for one of the RCS thrusters. And then there's a Jeffries tube over here, which actually goes down. And we'll come back out. And continue on. There's another airlock that climbs up to the top of the saucer. And here we have the hydroponics bay, where they grow all different kinds of plants and crops. There's a greenhouse in the center here, and more plants all the way down here. And we'll continue on. Over here, we have another emergency battery room. And these are located throughout the ship as well. Then we have another airlock, so we won't go into that. More of the same. Here, we have a water processing station. So you have a dirty water tank and a fresh water tank. And then you have the processing station over here. And right here, we have some more showers. Right here is the main starboard gangway. There's an airlock to get out right here, and you can come down the stairs to the next deck. And this big area is like an emergency pressure thing with all kinds of supplies. If the ship was damaged, you could survive in this chamber. And then that leads to the starboard airlock through this hallway. And through here, and here's the airlock. And we're on the very right-hand side on the edge of the saucer section right now. So we'll come back in and continue on. We have another different style of Jeffries tube here. Just supposed to be some energy conduits. And this is the starboard mess hall. This is the main mess hall on this side of the ship. There are food processors and a bathroom here. And this is where enlisted crew members would have their meals mainly. There's a few other smaller ones scattered throughout the ship as well. So there's all kinds of seating in here. Then we come back out, there's a second entrance. Across here there's a science lab with just some random equipment and stuff in here. Because the Enterprise is supposed to have a bunch of labs in it. And as we continue on around here, this is the starboard galley. And I modeled this on the galley of the Enterprise A, actually. So this is where there's an actual kitchen to cook stuff here. It's a little dim in there, so I'm going to throw some more lights up while we're in here. When you build something this big, you usually find little things like that. And then there's a door for kitchen staff to bring food out into that mess hall. And we'll come back out into the hallway and continue on. Here's another science lab of a different type. So you have two of these bays. I don't know what they're for. I modeled it off sets seen on Star Trek Voyager. Then over here, we have more RCS tanks for the RCS thruster on this side. There's another airlock. Here's the chemical processing plant. So if they needed to synthesize chemicals, that's what these machines are used for. Across here we have the astrometrics department offices. So they have a conference room, and then there's a couple offices with windows back there. Then continuing up, this is the actual astrometrics lab. And this is supposed to be like computers and then like a map of the stars right here. That's like in a half circle. Kind of hard to do in Minecraft. There's a turbo lift across from there. That hallway just has some quarters, which we'll see plenty of, so I won't go down there. Here's a structural integrity field generator. And there's plenty of these scattered around the ship too. And then up here, we have the forward observation room, which is actually from the later movies on the Enterprise A, seen in Star Trek V. But I thought it was cool and we'd include it. They have this old ship steering wheel here and a compass. And then these windows, this is actually as far forward on the ship as you can get. We're at the very front of the saucer on top. Across from that, on this upper level, we have the control room for the cargo bay. And it has a control room because I imagine they move everything around with tractor beams. And here's the saucer cargo bay. But we'll explore that more when we get on the next deck down. And we'll continue around to the port side here. There's another airlock. Here we have a forward gangway. That's the same. You can get down to the next deck, and it's this emergency locker room as well for survival. Here we just have a random conference room. Then another conference room here. Then here we have a shield generator. And we'll find these scattered throughout the ship as well. And there's a little control panel over there for this shield generator. Coming back around, that's more crew quarters down there, so we'll skip that hallway. Another airlock. Another RCS fuel tank room up here. And here we have the ship's bowling alley. It has its own bathroom and food processor back here, like a little lounge to hang out. Here's the bowling balls on the return. Here's the actual bowling lanes. It's just 2 lanes. And if we come back here, you can get back to the pin setters back here. So that's the bowling alley. And there's all kinds of windows to look out into space. So we'll come back out of the bowling alley. And we'll move on down our corridor. Another turbo lift there. Another entrance for the bowling alley. And then here, we're going to be coming around to the gangway. There's damage control supplies here. Just another locker room full of stuff. And this is the main gangway. Basically the main entrance for the ship. So when the crew gets deployed from like a starbase, this is where most of the crew would enter the ship. And it's 2 decks tall here. You can see both floors. You can get down to the next floor down here. And here's the actual main airlock. And we come out. We're on the left-hand side of the saucer on the edge of it. So this is where it would dock up when it's at a starbase, and the crew would board or leave the ship. So we'll come back in now. And this room's kind of weird. You have to come across if you're going back out onto this floor. That goes back through to the main turbo lift down this hallway. We have some more showers over here on both sides. And there's a bathroom over here. And we'll continue back and around here. Over here we have the port mess hall. So this is the other big mess hall of the ship for the enlisted crew. And same thing, it has a food processor at the back. All different types of seating here. And if we come through here, we come in, and this one also has its own galley to cook fresh food. Then here is one of the entrances to the ship's pool, but we're going to explore that more when we go to the gymnasium complex. You can see I kind of messed up the corridor there, it got too skinny. More RCS tanks here. There's a small weight room up here. And then this comes out onto the upper floor of the ship's gymnasium, which I tried to make match the design of the rec deck on the other side of the ship. You can see on the lower floor there's a basketball court down there, but we'll be exploring that more when we do the next deck. So we'll come past this gymnasium for now and continue over here. When we come out here, this is the other side of the upper impulse bay that we've seen before at the top of the warp core. Then there's a turbo lift, another shield generator room here. Then we have another structural integrity field generator. And this is the turbo lift car maintenance room. So they kind of have toolboxes and all kinds of machine shop stuff. These are supposed to be the extra turbo lift cars. that are being worked on, and they follow this track in the floor, and they can go right into the turbolift shaft, so they can come right out of there to be worked on very easily. And we'll head back out. Like I said, I regret these corridor designs here. If I do another Star Trek ship, I would definitely use a different corridor design. That door just goes to the pool again, which we'll see later. So we'll move on here. There's another bathroom here. And here we have solid waste processing. So anything that can't be recycled is processed in here, in this nasty brown tank. And we'll move on again. And actually, I think we're going to head back this way. And we'll head into the turbolift system here. And this will take us back up. So we're coming forward up the saucer back to the center here. And we're going to move down a deck. So now we're going to deck 5. In the center here, there's the bottom floor of this computer core. And we'll come around onto the starboard side here and come out of this turbolift. Now this first hallway has the main transporter rooms for the ship here. And there's 4, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. And we'll check one of these out real quick, because this is one of the main sets from the movie. So this is the transporter room, and I have it really dim like it was in the motion picture. Here's the control console for the operator. And here's the actual transporter pads. You'd stand up here. Go ahead and beam me down. And then they always had this hallway going off. So at the end of the hallway, this is where I put the pattern buffer for the transporter. It's really supposed to be underneath it, but this works. And then there's also access to a Jeffries tube system here, which goes down and around, switches over to some power conduits, and some other power relays down here. So we'll come back out of there, and come back up, back through here into the pattern buffer room, and back out into the transporter room. And back into the corridor and across the hall. It's just the same thing, but mirrored. And like I said, there's 2 more of these rooms on the other side of the ship. And we'll come to this first ring corridor here. In here we have junior officers' quarters. So they get their own quarters with a small bedroom, a shower, and a bathroom, just smaller than the senior officers' quarters. And there is a lot of these on this deck, so we can skip a lot because it's repetitive. And if we come back here, that's more junior officers' quarters, more of the same, more there. We'll come back here, another junior officers' quarters. Here we have some emergency supply locker, a turbo lift. And here we have a lifeboat. So this is like an escape pod. We got some seats in here and some beds. That's if you had to abandon ship. And we'll come back up the other way. Like I said, a lot of these inner rings are just quarters, so we can skip past a lot of the stuff on this other big deck. Come over here. More junior officer quarters. keep on cruising here. More quarters. Then we have a turbo lift here. And I think we'll actually head back this way. So you can see there's where I messed up the curvature on the quarter again and it got too skinny. So we have some more shower rooms. Sorry, game lag there. Then we'll be on this next ring. Down here, I think this is just more and more quarters. And yeah, there's just another quarters there, and they're all the same, so we'll move on. And we'll keep on cruising across here. Lots more quarters. And here is actually the barracks for the enlisted crew. They don't get their own quarters, so they just have a sitting room, and everyone sleeps in all these bunk beds. And then they have chests to store their stuff. And that's why there's so many shower rooms over, because there's a lot of enlisted barracks in here as well. And that's pretty much everything that's in this ring. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the outer ring now. More showers. Here we have another science lab. More showers. And now we're on the outer ring. So this is the starboard gangway at the bottom that we've seen before. Over here we have more barracks. We have a yeoman's office complex here for doing lots and lots of paperwork. More barracks. Another set of yeoman's offices through here. More offices again. When you build something this big, you're just trying to fill out space sometimes. And even more offices. Then over here is an emergency battery room. Another Jeffries tube with a power conduit in there. Here's the bottom of the RCS control bay. So that yellow thing is the back of the RCS thrusters that are around the edge of the saucer section. And we'll keep on cruising. We have a classroom if anyone needs training. And we'll head back out. Then this room is one of the landing leg rooms. So if the ship had to do an emergency saucer separation and the saucer had to land on a planet, that's all the hydraulics for the landing gear of the saucer section. There's another turbo lift there. More showers. This is the gravity generator for the saucer section. We'll keep moving here. Here we have the ship's theater. So we have all kinds of seats in here. And actually it kind of almost looks like a church. And then you can go up on stage, and this is where they can have speeches or put on plays. And we'll head out of here. Right here's the forward gangway on the bottom of it. And then we'll come back out again here and continue on. Here we have a conference room. Lots of conference rooms in here. And here's the saucer cargo bay, which is a fairly large complex. This is supposed to be the hatch that lowers down out of the bottom of the saucer to load cargo on this side. Come back over here, you can see that control room we were in earlier up there. Here's the cargo transporter. And then it extends off on this side, and there's another loading hatch on this side here. I didn't build them open just because I didn't want to. So we'll come back out, take one last look at this cargo bay here, and we'll come back out to where we were. And we'll keep moving. There's another conference room. Here's just a spare room that could be used for anything. Here's another RCS bay. Then we have this Jeffries tube here, which has some consoles down in the middle of it here. And then another landing leg room. Here's the chapel for the ship, where crew members can practice religious ceremonies. Then there's another turbo lift right there. More barracks. And now we're back on the top section of that main gangway on this side that we were in earlier, so we'll just skip past it. There's another damage control locker. Coming around, we got more barracks here. Another shield generator room. Another turbo lift. Here's an auxiliary reactor. So if both the warp reactor and the impulse reactors went down, this could take over powering the ship. More quarters on that side. Then right here we just have another lounge with some food processor slots, so the people don't have to go all the way to the mess hall if they don't want to. Here's another RCS control room. Then we have atmosphere processors in here. And now we're going to come out on the bottom floor of the gymnasium here. And like I showed you earlier when we were up top, we have a full-size basketball court in here. And if we come through here, this is your locker room to get ready to go swimming with some showers. And you come up these stairs, and this is where the ship's pool is. It's not very deep because I only had so much space to work with, but there is a pool in here. And then over here, we have a big hot tub. So that's the pool room here. And we'll come back down here. And if you did want to get upstairs, you don't have to go out of the gym. There's this stairwell back here. So this can take you up top, and that's supposed to be like a running track. So that's the gymnasium complex, and we'll move on here. And then this takes us to the lower floor of the impulse engine bay, where we were on the top before. Here's the warp core coming off and splitting off into the impulse reactors. And we can climb up here and access the actual reactors for the impulse engines back here. And if we come over here, there's an airlock right here that goes up to the top of the saucer. And we're on the very back of the saucer, as you can see here. And we'll go back in. And we'll come back out in here. There's a short Jeffries tube with a little console back in this room here. So that's the impulse bay. There's a turbo lift in here too. And we'll come back out. And that's that same turbo lift. Then we'll have to come down and around to get back to the other side. The turbo lift system becomes very convoluted, trying to fit it all in here. So we'll come out on this side. Lots more quarters through here, which are all the same that we've seen before. There's another turbo lift. Down there is the stairs that go down the neck of the ship at the front of the neck. Then this goes to the rec deck, which was seen in the motion picture. Back here there's like a little lounge area. And you can see the turbo lift right there. And this was one of the main rooms that I wanted to get. It's one of the biggest rooms in the ship here. This is where Kirk stood when he addressed the entire crew in the motion picture and was talking about Beecher. You can see the two turbo lifts going through here, which actually are turbo lifts. This is where they had the paintings on the wall of the different ships named Enterprise. I had paintings up there, but they disappeared somehow. Then they had all these sitting areas with little game tables. And then it comes all the way back here. And there's windows looking out the back of the saucer there. There's a bathroom over here, so you don't have to leave the rec deck to use the facilities. If we come around behind here, there's another seating area, and then you can go up to the second level of the rec deck, which had the windows back here. And there was even people standing up here during Captain Kirk's briefing. You can look out back there at the warp engine. And it comes up here, there's some food processors. And you can come up and around here. And here's a turbo lift. And we can come back out of here. There's another turbo lift. And that'll take us down and around and out. Right through here. And we'll quickly come back around here, because there's yet another entrance for the rec deck down here. And this is where Captain Kirk entered from for his briefing. So that's the whole rec deck area, and we'll move on. We have another water processing plant in here. Some lifeboats over there. Another RCS thruster bay here. Then here we have another lounge, which isn't a full mess hall, it's just a small lounge here with some food processor slots over there. There's that turbo lift we just came out of. Another emergency battery room here. And we'll keep on cruising. Some more atmospheric processors. Here's the bottom of the starboard gangway. And there's the barracks where we started from. So we'll shoot back up this corridor to the center of the ship here. And and we'll move down a deck. We're finally done with the giant decks of the saucer. So we'll come down here to deck 6, which is much smaller. Over here, we have an emergency transporter, which is much bigger than the other ones. This would only be used in an evacuation situation. And if you come through here, it has its pattern buffer back here. Then we'll come back out here. And here is the bottom of the computer core. Then if we shoot off this way, there's some bathrooms in here. And this is the lower starboard phaser bank control room with the bottom of the turrets here. Head back to the center. Like I said, this deck isn't nearly as large. Over here we have the main saucer airlock on bottom. And there's just a room full of spacesuits. Then the starboard airlock here, which is actually closed off by this big green hatch, which is on the bottom of the saucer. So that hatch would have to be open to use that airlock. Then we'll head back to the center here. This comes up to the front of the ship. And there's a bunch of lifeboats through here. Then the lower forward phaser bank room. Come back around this way. Here's the other airlock room on the bottom of the saucer. And same thing, that outer hatch is closed, but this is where Spock left the ship to do his spacewalk with V'ger in the motion picture. And we'll head back around here. Here's the port phaser bank control room. We have another hallway down here, a battery room, and an auxiliary reactor down here. And back here we have a sensor generator, because right below us are the main sensors. So we'll go back into the turbo lift. And we'll come down here to deck 7, the main planetary sensors, and this is the dome at the very center of the bottom of the saucer. And you can see the sensors down there going off in all 4 directions. Then also, just because I had space, there's a Jeffries tube that goes around the outer edge of this. So now, we're done with everything in the saucer section. We gotta head back up the turbo lift to head back down to the neck of the ship. So we'll come back up and start heading towards the back. And here's the main gangway again, the stairs in the front of the neck. So we'll use these to go down a level. You can also use the turbo lift. So now we're in the neck of the ship, which really doesn't have that much room for stuff, and I even made it oversized. We have a supply room up here, turbo lift over here. Here's the deck 6 warp core access, which I made all these access points have a ladder, so you can climb all the way down through the warp core this way. And all of these look like mini main engineerings. Then we'll come back here. This is coolant tanks back here. we'll head back to the turbo lift to go down. So we'll come down a deck here. Now we're on deck 7. There's some bathrooms over here. And a crew chief office for the boss of the people who work in the neck here. This heads back around to the stairs at the front of the neck. Here's the deck 7 warp core access. And back here, another water treatment plant for the decks of the neck. And that's it for this deck, and we'll move down. So I'll come back in the turbo lift again. And this is where it gets convoluted because it has to go around the warp core. Like I said, there's not much room in this neck. We get behind the warp core and then we can come down a deck. So back here, we have a shield generator, which stretches across. We can come back up around the warp core here. There's a lounge with food processor slots for the people who work in the neck to take their breaks. That goes back up to the stairs. Here's deck 8 warp core access. And back around to that same shield generator room, and we'll move on. Then we'll come down again. This comes back. We have some atmospheric processors on both sides here. And back here, just because I had space, there's a tiny Jeffries tube with some power conduits. So we'll head back forward. And we'll come up around here. Here's deck 9 warp core access. Then up here, there's a bathroom, and this comes around to the stairs. And that's it for this deck. So back into the turbo lift we go. We'll come down again here. Now we're on deck 10. We have an emergency battery room back here. And there's sporadic windows to match the exterior of the ship. We'll come up and around this. Here's the bottom of the stairs coming down the neck here. Here's the deck 10 warp core access. And another emergency battery room on this side. So we'll come into the turbo lift. Now it comes back before going down again to get to the back of the neck. And we'll come out here on deck 11. Now this is the upper of 3 floors for the Photon torpedo bay. This upper floor is where the torpedoes are actually stored. There's a little control panel. And there's these racks of torpedoes here. That's what all these slabs are supposed to be. Then there's a robot arm going down into the lower bay. This arm would grab the torpedoes off the racks here and lower them down into the actual bay. Then if we come up front here, this is the upper level of the actual launcher. And you can see that's the warp core and an armored casing through this area. And the launcher is below us, which we'll see when we get to a lower deck. So we'll come back to the turbo lift again. And we come down here. Now, back here is the emergency torpedo control if the main one was damaged. And then there's stairs that take us back up a deck here. This is the mid deck of the torpedo bay. And you can see that robot arm going down through to the lower deck and the torpedo storage bay above us. And there was guys standing up here during Spock's funeral in the Wrath of Khan. And here's the mid deck of the torpedo launchers. I put one on each side here. In the main bay, there's just one. There's supposed to be multiple as implied by the movies, but even making the neck oversized, there was barely enough room for one main torpedo bay. So if we come up here, here's the starboard airlock. And this is where we're at on the ship. We're at the bottom of the neck, behind the torpedo launchers. We come up front here. Here's the lower bay to see the actual mechanism for the torpedo launchers here. And then this takes us into the actual torpedo bay that was seen in the movies. Like I said, there's supposed to be multiple. I could barely fit one. And this is the torpedo bay. Back here, we have an airlock on the other side as well here. And here's the bottom of that arm. It's lowering a torpedo down under this track now. So the torpedo would come through that hatch and go off to the side to one of the launchers. And this is where Spock's funeral was in the Wrath of Khan. I tried to make it as accurate as I could in vanilla Minecraft, but there's only so much you can do, especially with the space constrictions. So now we're going to move down again, and we're actually out of the neck now in the top of the engineering hall. So this is deck 14, and this is just the primary deuterium tankage. So this is the matter storage fuel tanks for the warp core. Same thing going back this way. It's just all deuterium tanks up here. And I tried to make this look slightly industrial with the amount of space I had. Then the turbo lift splits off to go to each side. We're only going to tour one side of the engineering hall because you have the big cargo bay in the middle and it's pretty much mirrored from both sides here. So we're on the starboard side of deck 15 here. Here's the machine shop for engineering to make any spare parts that they would need. So we have all kinds of tool boxes and equipment in here. And then we'll cruise back. We have more lifeboats through here. Now this is the plasma transfer control. This is right behind the very back of main engineering. And this is where the warp plasma splits off. You can see it down through here to go up into each warp engine nacelle. So we're actually going to tour the nacelle because this has full interior as well. So we have to climb up the pylon here. You can see the warp plasma conduit is still going up there. Now we're in the bottom of the nacelle. There's a bunch of coolant tanks back here. We'll come up, you can see the warp plasma going up here. And we'll come through here. We'll actually go to the front of the nacelle first. Here's the collected fuel storage tanks. And at the very front of the nacelle up here, we have the Bizarre collectors. I did 4 of them in mine. And they're taking in interstellar hydrogen as extra fuel. Then if we come up these stairs here, and around here, this is the nacelle control room, which has 2 floors. There's a console in the middle. And then you can look out here and see the warp plasma going down the nacelle. And you can actually come in here. This is where the plasma is injected into the nacelle. You would not want to be standing here when this thing was on. Then the plasma is coming through the center of the nacelle. You can see all the massive warp coils through here, which continues to the back. So that's what it looks like in the center of the nacelle, but there's some more details around here we'll check out. So if we come back down here and go back up front, there's another set of stairs. And that leads us to this massive Jeffries tube that takes us along the bottom of the nacelle to the back of it. And this comes all the way down to the back. And back here is where the plasma feeds back into the system to be reused if need be. And then there's this big piece of equipment back here shown in the diagrams. I believe it's the off-axis warp field generator. And if we come up this ladder here, we can climb to the top. Because I had extra room, there's another level to the nacelle up here. So up here there's this catwalk to come through above all the warp coils. And that slime going in is supposed to be coolant for each warp coil. And then if you come through here, we're up above where the Buzzard collectors were at the front again. And that's everything for the nacelle. And it's the same thing on the other engine, just mirrored, so we won't tour the other engine. And we'll come back down the pylon here. Back into this control room. And then we'll come down and out. So we'll come around here. We're heading towards the back of the ship. There's a bathroom here. Same thing on that other side. Then we have the aft phaser control room here. And there's another one on that side. And then this is the air traffic control room. This is for controlling all the incoming and outgoing shuttlecraft from the ship. And as you can see, we're at the very back of the engineering hall, above where the shuttles leave the ship. If you look up there, you can see the warp engines way up there. And there's also these nice windows to look down into the shuttle bay there. So that's air traffic control. And we'll head back forward now. We've seen some of this. It's kind of weird coming into here because that turbo lift comes out in the center of the deck. Here's the turbo lift we came in at. There's a shower room here for the engineering crew. We have a conference room. Then the chief engineer's office. Some lifeboats through here. Then there's another turbo lift up here at the front of the ship. And this comes around at the front here. This is equipment lockers and radiation suits up here. And this is the actual main engineering. And this computer here is where Kirk was talking to Decker at the beginning of the motion picture. There's supposed to be a corridor going forward, but there's not enough room. It doesn't line up with the outside of the ship. So this is where the warp core splits off. And I use scaffolding here because Kirk comes down this elevator in the movie. And here's the top. I built a roof right there, even though the warp core goes all the way up higher, because the set shows a roof at the top there. But the warp core does go all the way through the ship farther than that. And if we come over here, here's the dilithium crystal chamber. And this is where Spock sacrificed himself to save the ship at the end of Wrath of Khan. And I made it open, showing the crystal. And then this is where the warp energy splits off to head all the way back down and split up to the nacelles. And this is a lot longer than it was shown in the movie, but that's where it had to be to fit the outside of the ship. So you can see we're under that control room we were just in, and that's where the energy split. I made it glass there just so you could see it going through all the way. Then we'll come back up this side here. There's a ladder on this side to climb all the way up and down the warp core. And we'll come back out of main engineering. And we'll come through here and use this front turbo lift this time. And come down a deck. If we come across the front here, here's the deck 16 warp core access. Then over here we have a Jeffries tube. And that actually goes down as well to this little room. Across from that we have a restroom. And there's just another turbo lift on this side. And it comes back to the main area of the deck. We have an emergency battery room here. Then there's a shield generator on each side back here. Then these go into the turbo lifts on both sides. We have an atmospheric processor for the shuttle bay and cargo bay, which is below us. We have a water treatment facility, some storage rooms, and back here's another one of the main lounges, and this is the place you would want to be. If you come back here, it has these great windows that look down into the shuttle bay. And this one even has a bar in it, so this would be the happening place on the ship to be. And there's food processor slots over there. And we'll come back forward here. There's another battery room up here. And we'll come back through the turbo lift. On that other side it connects to the other parts of the turbo lift system, but we're just going to go down another deck. So now we're on deck 17 here. There's a shower room right here. Over here we have a barracks for some of the enlisted crew that actually live down in the engineering hall. There's a regular bathroom up here and another one. Then there's a mess hall, so you wouldn't have to go all the way up if you were just on your break. And here's the other turbo lift. There's a storage room. Come back around here, there's a lifeboat. Then this is the shuttle bay control room itself. And this is for like maneuvering shuttles around in here with tractor beams. So you can observe the actual shuttle bay over there. These cobwebs are supposed to be like holograms floating there, showing a 3D space. And you can take a peek back at the cargo bay from here. And that's pretty much it on this deck. So we're going to go all the way back forward to that front turbo lift to make sure we don't miss anything. So back in this front turbo lift again, and we'll come down a level. If we go through here, this takes us to the main deflector control room, and that's the back of the main deflector dish at the front of the engineering hall. And you can see I have it splitting off from the warp core here, so it's being powered by the warp core. And then if we come back through to the other side here, here's a bathroom right here. And we'll come around. We have a Jeffries tube with some controls and stuff in here. Some more lifeboats. And then over here takes us into the main cargo bay on the upper deck of it. You can see the turbo lifts running through the center, just like in the movie. And this is a fairly huge space here. It's multiple stories, and this turbo lift is actually connected to all the turbo lift system. Then over here is the airlock. There's a work bee over there loading cargo. If we come to this side, this is where Kirk enters the ship in the motion picture, and this airlock's supposed to be at this same level, but I had to raise it up here because if you look the way it worked out, if I would have put it at that level, it would have interrupted the writing on the side of the ship. So I ended up just making a ramp to raise that airlock up a little bit. And we'll come back over to the other side because that's the side we were on. And so here's that airlock. Same thing on the other side. And there's a ramp that goes back down, brings you into the cargo bay. Then you can actually come back here. There's another turbo lift here. And it takes you all along back here into the main shuttle bay. You can see we have a shuttle waiting here. One just took off. We're at the back of the ship. There's the warp engines up there, and I have the shuttle bay doors open. And this shuttle does have an interior as well here. So you can come in here. It's not much, but you can come inside the shuttle here. Then over here on the side is where the work bees park. That's supposed to be the work bee. And there's more on that other side. Then back here is an airlock, so if the main shuttle bay doors were closed but you needed to get outside, you could come through here. Then this leads back onto the outer corridor of the deck. Coming through this Jeffries tube first here. Here's a structural integrity field generator. There's the turbo lift. Then there's these stairs that go up right here to a conference room. And this will be used by like the cargo bay crew. And we'll come back down. Come around here. We have another emergency battery room. And some more lifeboats. That's where we entered the cargo bay, so we're back at the front here. And we'll come back in the turbo lift. And we'll head on down to deck 19. Come around here. This is the very top of one of the engineering hall computer cores. And there's one on each side. The engineering hall has 2 computer cores as well. There's shower rooms. Another emergency battery room on this deck. This takes us onto the 2nd level of the cargo bay, which we've seen before just on the upper level. There's that work bee loading cargo into its bay up there. Then if you follow this back, this is the door control room, so there would actually be big doors that close between the cargo bay and shuttle bay if you wanted. But I have them all open because it's just cooler that way. Come back out into the corridor. Emergency battery room, a bathroom, a lifeboat here. There's the back of that cargo bay door control room. More lifeboat. Another lifeboat. Back here is the shuttle bay storage here. So over here we have an empty space, and there's the shuttle elevator. So this lowers the shuttles down from the shuttle bay deck to this hangar deck below. So there's another shuttle on here, another one parked in here. And under here we have the little tiny shuttle pods, which is what Scotty took Kurt to the ship in the motion picture. And this has a tiny interior as well. And another shuttle pod over here. Then up here there's some fuel tanks for the shuttles, and this is where they'd also do maintenance on them. Then we have this rear corridor. Here's the tractor beam generator back here. And if you come off to the side, this is the actual machinery for shutting the main shuttle bay doors. Then there's this Jeffries tube that goes down and around the back. This is as far rear as you can get on the ship inside the engineering hall. And it just comes back around to the door motors on this side. And then back to that corridor and back out to the shuttle hangar here. And we're gonna head back up front to that front turbo lift again to make sure we don't miss anything on the next deck. So we'll head back down the turbo lift. Then we have the lower level for the deflector dish control here. So this is the bottom of the deflector dish. And if we come over here, there's another deflector control, which has all like the computer chips for it. And this was kind of modeled on the room Kirk's in the Enterprise B when it gets hit with the Nexus, but I figured it would have that same type of control room in this ship as well. For some reason I got stuck there. So this just comes down to all these computer chips. Come back out here. And we'll go back over here. There's a damage control locker with supplies. And then we got to come down more. So we'll come down here to deck 20. Right here is the computer core on this side of the ship for the engineering hall. And this is a fairly large bay. There's also this ladder that takes us down to some power relays underneath it here. And much like the computer core in the saucer section, there is actually a control room inside it. And over there's a bathroom. Here's warp core access for this deck, which we're getting down to the bottom of the warp core finally. Over here there's another computer core on this side. And that's kind of sectioned off just with the way the outside of the ship was. So we got to come back up to this other turbo lift to get to the proper area of that deck, which is the main floor of this cargo bay. As you can see, we have cargo pods all along the side and on the bottom. On the sides of it here, we have a cargo transporter, which has its own pattern buffer in here. And then there's the controls for the cargo transporter. The turbo lifts come through. Then there's another turbo lift back here. And this is going to take us to the other part of this deck. So there's a little window there. We have a small lounge for cargo bay workers to take a break in. If you come back here, we've got a Jeffries tube with a ladder that spans multiple decks here. And we'll take a look at where that goes in just a moment here. There's another auxiliary reactor in the back of the ship here. And another water processing plant back here. So if we come back up here and come across here, there's an atmosphere processor. Then some bathrooms. And over on this side is the main brig and security complex. And this is modeled off of the Enterprise A. So they have a briefing room for the security officers. And here's the holding cells of the brig. And I put 2 of them in here. They have their own bathroom. And we'll actually go back around where we were before. And we'll come back in this Jeffries tube. And this comes out behind the holding cells. And this is modeled after what happened in Star Trek V, where Scotty blew a hole in the back wall of this holding cell, and they escaped into the Jeffries tubes, which is supposed to be the Enterprise A, but I put it on this ship. And then there's also a whole maze of Jeffries tubes back here. And that ladder goes down to more Jeffries tubes below us. But they were able to get through the Jeffries tubes and escape into the bottom of the turbo lift. So because I had space, I made that happen here, so we can still come down this ladder into these. And if we come right here, this comes out in the bottom of the turbo lift shaft. And up there's the bottom of the cargo bay. Now we're on deck 21. There's a little sitting area back here. More Jeffries tubes back here. That's where that other ladder comes down. And we have transporter pattern buffers on either side back here. And a battery room. And we'll come back out here. Come back up around here. There's a lifeboat. And here's another large emergency transporter for evacuation situations. Probably the biggest one here. It's so big I made it have 2 control panels. That stretches across to the other side. Another lifeboat, another turbo lift. Another lifeboat, and then the other side of that Jeffries tube. And if we come up through here, now we're at the Arboretum. And this is where those big windows on the bottom of the engineering hall is. And this is a green space for the crew with all kinds of plants and stuff. And it's decent size here. There's a little bench to sit on, all kinds of walking paths. We even have some running water in here. A little bridge. Over here there's a tiny little fountain. And you can look out and see the ground down there. So that's the Arboretum. And if we come through here, there's a Jeffries tube. We'll check that one out in a minute here. And we'll come up around here. There's the front turbo lift. There's a bathroom. And this is the very bottom of the warp core. So we have antimatter pods here, and the antimatter reactor down here, where the antimatter gets injected into the warp core. And then there's more antimatter fuel pods on this other side. So we're finally at the bottom of the warp core there. Then up here, there's deflector servos, and these are actual physical pistons that can slightly move the angle of the deflector physically if need be. And we'll come back around this side and we'll check out that Jeffries tube now, because there's the Arboretum again. So if we come here and down, this final deck down here is only accessible by Jeffries tubes. Here's the CO2 scrubbers, so this is just an engineering deck. There's some lifeboats down here as well. And they kind of go off in a maze-like pattern here. Then here's the lower phaser control rooms, because there's phasers on the bottom of the ship as well. Same thing on this side here. Some more emergency batteries down here. And this is where the tube starts curving up, because we're underneath the shuttle bay on the back of the ship. Then there's a ladder to come all the way up, back into those Jeffries tubes up here, so we can actually escape this. And we can come back out here into the cargo bay again. And that's just going to be the quickest route to get out of the ship. And as we saw before, there's one shuttle that just took off back here. So that's the full tour, finally, of my Minecraft USS Enterprise. And I'd like to thank you if you've made it to the end of this video, because this was a long one, because it's so huge. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And everyone, have a great week. Stay safe out there, everyone.